Are you ready?
Are you ready?
For a podcast hosted by George T.
Who the hell are you?
I am the movie geek.
Who are you?
I am the movie geek.
You are such a geek.
Thank you.
And now, on with the show.
It's time!
It's showtime.
It's showtime. Here we go.
Welcome back to the Movie Geek Podcast. My name is George T, and this is the top 10 or top many films that I will be reviewing. Obviously, the last episode was all about the history and the genres of horror, and while I was doing it, thinking that it was going to be all one, but I wound up thinking halfway through, hey, you know what, maybe we should make this two, because there's going to be a lot of talking about these films that I will be recommending. So anyone out there who agrees, disagrees, want me to talk about any other horror films during this time frame, I will be more than happy to. Obviously, with the YouTube side, it would be easier to contact. But if you're listening on Spotify and stuff, or wherever you get podcasts, it can be easy as well to interact. I would love some interaction with fans. I know a few people have left some comments on the YouTube side of the podcast, so please feel free to do so. So we won't get any news in on this one because I did it on the last one. So we're going to go right into it. So let us get into movies. So, or best movies, or movies that I would recommend, or best movies that I have seen in certain genres. Let's start with the kids. Okay. I have two, obviously, George and AJ. And I would say that for kid-friendly horror, animated or non-animated. So you got your animated. You've got Frankenweenie, which was out in 2012. Monsters, Inc., 2001. Now, this is where it gets tricky. Monsters, Inc. is really not that scary. But the concept, obviously, is scary. A monster's coming into a young girl's room to scare them. So, again, this is where the lines blur from horror to just a regular kids' comedy. Paranorman 2012, Monster House 2006, Corpse Bride 2005, Coraline 2009, Hotel Transylvania 2012 sparked three more movies. And then, obviously, the one from my generation, and I loved, 1949's The Adventures of Ichabod Crane and Mr. Toad, along with The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. These are two short films that they linked together, and those movies were really good when I was growing up. Although I did not grow up in 1949, but I'm just saying, in general, those two movies are funny, but they're also a little scary for children. And then, obviously, the king of it would be Nightmare Before Christmas, 1993. So, again, scary to kids because, Jack Skellington's a skeleton, and you've got Halloween Town, and you've got Christmas, and combining the two. So those are the kid friendly, as far as kid friendly regular movies, or as they get into teenagers. You got Gremlins 1984, Ghostbusters 1984. I loved Ghostbusters. I mentioned this on the Ghostbusters episode that I did. the one of the first movies I ever sat down front at a movie theater. I told myself I would never do that again. But it was opening weekend. I went with a buddy of mine, and it was basically, the only seats we had available, and because theater was packed, and so having to see it kind of twisted made it very, very interesting. Along that same line, I have Addams Family, which was 1991, Casper, 1995, Goosebumps, 2015, Arachnophobia, 1990. Now, this movie, obviously, if you are a scared of spiders, do not watch this movie. It is so creepy. I know my son George is definitely afraid of spiders. I know I could never get him to watch this movie, but it was so terrifying. It was funny. Jeff Daniels was in this film as the star of this film, and he actually did an amazing job, and all of that acting was real. He was not fake. He was definitely scared of spiders. So it made it very, very interesting. I give him a ton of credit for doing it, and it was a really good film. And then, of course, Beetlejuice is obviously a very kid-friendly kind of movie, 1988, and then Little Shop of Horrors, 1986. Not so much scary, but for some reason it is in the horror genre. Steve Martin and Rick Moranis with the big Venus flytrap. He's such a crazy movie. It was a musical, so it was it was definitely funny. So that goes to the comedy horror aspect. So let's go through movies or best movies of the decades voted by fans and writers everywhere. So obviously I mentioned early on in 1920, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligula was the scariest movie of the 20s. The 30s was Frankenstein. This movie was made in 1931. 1940, The Uninvited. 1944. This movie was redone back in 2012, I think it was. Not as good as the original. 1950, The Invasion of the Body Snatchers. 1956. Crazy pod people. It's such a crazy film. And it's horrifying, though, to think that somebody could steal your body or steal your look and try to act as you. It's kind of crazy. Clearly, 1960 was owned by Psycho, which was 1960 it came out. Norman Bates. I mean, talk about a character with psychological issues. His mother is still in his house. He is talking through her, talking as her, dressing as her, and I think the show Bates Motel really put a interesting spin on his relationship with his mother. Now, it was modernized a little bit, obviously, with technology and whatnot, but the premise of it was his mother was overbearing, didn't think that he, could survive on his own, was, made sure that, he was always loving his mother, and his mother was always doing things and for him. And Bates Motel ended with him killing his mother, and then, kind of taking over that psychological guilt. And this is where, if you go back and look at, you know, Norman talking to his first victim, and then going up into the house and having this psychological breakdown with his mother, saying that, get that woman out of here, or I'm going to have to take care of her. And then he snaps, and he winds up killing her in the shower, which is the most iconic scene ever. And, the rest is history. So this movie is completely psychological, and obviously a slasher film at the same time. 1970, The Exorcist. 1973, this movie was made. And I'll talk about The Exorcist in a minute. 1980, The Shining. Talk about going completely insane. You've got your complete isolation in a hotel for months, and it's snowing. There's no way to get out of there. There's nobody around for miles. At times the radios don't work. Then at one point, obviously, he dispatches the radio. To be completely isolated is scary. Just like when you talk about outer space movies, being isolated out in space has got to be scary enough, because one false move and you're never coming home. So that kind of thing can drive a person insane. Obviously, in The Shining, that's what happened. 1990, Scream ruled that decade. 1996. Obviously, it was the beginning of a new genre of slasher films, or teen horror films, and Scream definitely lived up to that hype, and subsequently has continued to go on and on. 2000, and I don't agree with this at all, by the way, but Paranormal Activity was rooted. It was the best one for that genre, or that decade. I absolutely, completely disagree. There are so many better movies in 2000 than that, and I'll go through those later. 2010, this one was kind of interesting, was Get Out. And this movie was completely psychological, and it was really well done. But again, I thought there was so much more better films out there that could have taken that spot. So with all that combined, let's look at so you've got your genre, you've got your best movies of decades. So I'll talk about the number one movie, the scariest movie voted by fans, everybody out there. The Exorcist. Absolutely terrifying. That a demon possessing a small child. Was she small? Yeah, she was a young student. And, the Catholic Church trying to say that she wasn't possessed. It was all, it was all made up. And then eventually they realize that she is marked by the demon, the devil. And it's just a crazy film. And it's scary. The scene where she's walking down the stairs backwards is, what. So I want to just a side note on this movie. So when they re-released it in the theaters and added some footage and whatnot, I went to see it. Obviously The Exorcist came out when I was a young boy, so as I became a teenager, I got to see this film. But going to the theater and seeing it re-released with a bunch of teenagers in the movie theater, when that scene happened where she was walking down the stairs and some of this other stuff, and the kids were laughing, I don't know how I felt about it. I just felt like, why are people laughing? Like, this, you have to remember, this is 1973. We don't have that big special effects like every movie now has, where you've got your jump scares and you've got, just terrifying gore. And so this movie was definitely scary. If you don't agree with me, that's fine too. And I would love some feedback on any of this stuff that I've talked about in this episode. So I want to go over a list of movies from the decades that I've been alive. So let's go back to 1970. I was born in 76. So you've got Jaws, 1975. Now, this one is a little weird for me because I don't find this to be horrific, or it is scary though, because I'm not a big ocean person. So not knowing what is in the waters is terrifying to me. So if it's not a pool, I don't go in it. Just, plain and simple. Halloween, 1978, the birth of the first Scream Queen, Jamie Lee Curtis, about a babysitter being stalked. Right? It's terrifying. Alien, 1979. Again, out in space, finding a alien ship, being brought back onto the ship, and then having an alien running around after bursting through a chest. Scary. Dawn of the Dead, 1973. Sparked a whole bunch of movies from there. Carrie, 1976. A child with telepathic powers and a mother who was absolutely terrified of her child, and just it was a crazy film. The Omen, well, I mentioned that one earlier, 1976. Amityville Horror, 1979. Crazy to know what the Lutzes went through. It's well documented. And then, of course, The Exorcist. So then you get the 80s. You've got The Shining, Friday the 13th. Now, Gremlins is in this one. Aliens is in this one. How about The Fog, 1980? We all drive in the fog, and just thinking that there are monsters in the fog, kind of creepy. Pet Cemetery, Jesus Christ. We've all had pets that have died. I don't want to see them coming back from the dead. Just sorry. It's so crazy. But then and again, the grief of a parent losing a child, but trying to reanimate them never goes well. Great film, though. Predator is on this list, and I don't know exactly why Predator is in the horror genre. Like, I don't know. It's weird to me. 1987, and then Poltergeist is 1982. One of the scariest films for me when I was growing up. Again, like I said, I literally lived under my covers for years. 1990s saw some really creepy ones. You've got Misery, 1990. Being isolated in a delusional fan's world, being held hostage, basically. Crazy film. Kathy Bates was amazing in this film. All right, next we will talk about Sleepy Hollow, 1999. Again, based on a horror lore of the Headless Horseman. So, some people find it a little scary. It was okay. More witchy and so on, but still a good film. Sixth Sense, 1999. M. Night Shyamalan's first big movie about a kid who sees dead people. And Bruce Willis, if you haven't seen the movie, please, I'm going to spoil it right now so you can turn it off. But Bruce Willis not knowing that he is actually a dead person is a amazing twist. This was M. Night Shyamalan's breakout film. I will have a M. Night Shyamalan episode once I finish with Trap, and I will do that review and a review of his movies, good and bad. And I know he's got his ups and downs, but we'll talk about that. Scream, obviously, I talked about 1996 in the last one. Obviously, it turned a whole genre around, and spawned many sequels, and then spawned other franchises like I Know What You Did Last Summer with Jennifer Love Hewitt. I didn't like that series. I think it was trying to capitalize on the teen horror, but it wasn't as good. Although it did star Sarah Michelle Gellar, and I love Sarah Michelle Gellar, I really do. But I wasn't a big fan of this franchise. Let's talk about Seven and Silence of the Lambs. So, these are horror in multiple categories of the subgenres. So a lot of people don't think Silence of the Lambs and Seven are horror films. They are rooted in horror, but obviously suspense and thriller is what people think of in this regard. But hear me out on this. So Seven, you have not so much a serial killer, but a man who is obviously not really insane, but psychologically damaged, where he comes up with this plan to execute the 7 deadly sins. And the time and precision to operate this all and plan it all out is what's terrifying about this. Because obviously, clearly, we do not have all the information until the very end. So you need to know why he did these horrific acts to these people, the 7 deadly sins. And then clearly his masterpiece was to be finished, and he knew what buttons to push. He knew he was going to die one way or the other. He wanted to die on his own. So, and then being, Brad Pitt's character being confronted with that choice to either take his life or allow him to live, even though he took the head off of his wife and didn't know that she was pregnant. So it is a horrifying thing to think of. So in that regard, it is a horror film. Silence of the Lambs is also, because you have the birth of Hannibal Lecter, who is a psychology professor by day or by trade, and then obviously a killer, a cannibal by night or weekend or whatever it is. So we understand that Hannibal Lecter is just a mass murderer, basically. And he is, or psycho killer, whatever you want to call him. And he is, in prison, we get to meet Clarice Starling, played by Jodie Foster, an amazing actress. This movie was so good. But it's also terrifying in the fact that Buffalo Bill, or Wild Bill, was out there collecting bodies and skinning them alive and then wearing their skin. That's horrifying. That is body deformity. It's a lot of psychological problems. So, and the horrifying thing about it is the way it was, shown, where, always dark and his character was just a psychopath that preyed on people. So, and then dinging up her past while talking to Lecter, and it's just, I think it belongs in the horror genre because of the multitude of subgenres that it goes through. So Silence of the Lambs is one that a lot of people don't know of, and again is not the first thing you would think of as horror. You would think of it as a sci-fi. Is a movie called Cube. It is about strangers that are locked in cubes, and as they move, some of the cubes are booby trapped, some of the cubes are safe. So as they start moving around these cubes, they keep finding more people in the cubes, and then they have to figure out a way to find a way out, because they're trapped in this thing. But they don't know how to get out, so they go through many different things, like red rooms are bad. Well, eventually they wind up only seeing red rooms, so they have to figure out which one is bad or good. There's a multitude of different aspects in the 6 characters that are in there, especially one that is autistic, but he is a number savant, so they have to use him because each room or each cube has a room number or a slot in position, which they realize afterwards as the walls in some of the rooms are shaking. Well, they realize that there is one cube on the outside of this probably very large cube that is moving around in certain spots, or it's moving cubes around the cube. So there has to be one cube to get out, and they have to figure it out. And it's terrifying because, again, isolation will cause mayhem. And the strong cop who is trying to galvanize the team, but he's very hard on them for being too weak or whatever, winds up going completely insane and starts killing a few people because, again, the isolation, and he wants to get out of there. He wants to be the first one to get out and leave the rest of them there and let them suffer. So in that regard, it is a horror film, but if you really look at it on the surface, it's a sci-fi movie. And it's a very good sci-fi movie, so definitely check it out. It's called Cube. Finally, the one I mentioned in the last one about the Japanese horror film. This one will scare the living daylights out of you. Audition, 1999. So this one is about a woman who basically tortures and sacrifices a man for who is a domestic for hitting women and stuff. She literally tortures him to death, and just psychologically being frozen or tied down or just frozen in fear is terrifying. Then when somebody is trying to talk to you and you're trying to answer and you don't answer right, you're getting cut, or you're getting sawed or whatever. It's just terrifying. It is such a good film, though. I would definitely recommend this film. This came out in 1999. So that was the 90s. 2000s opened up a whole new world. So there are so many films, but I want to talk about a few briefly. 28 Days Later, the zombie one. You had also World War Z as well come out. Saw was another movie in 2004. Now, funny thing about Saw is the movie was really, really good until the very end when Carrie Elway's character decides to go and get help, and the only way he can do that is to cut up his own foot and drag himself out. I found this very funny that, again, he's bleeding, his foot's on the ground. How the hell is he going to get out, even though he has no idea where he's going to go? He's going to pass out from the blood he's lost. So, again, things that like that. So, as Saw got better, or more and more, although the 3D one was not really good, and they should have not done it in 3D. But Saw has become such a great series over time. They redid it, they prequeled it with Jigsaw. Saw 10 went back and did a little bit of prequel as well. There is another one coming out soon. I think it's been pushed, but I don't have all the details yet, and I will try to get that. A movie called The Descent, 2005. This is 4 adventurous ladies who wind up in a cave. They get lost and do not realize that there are creatures down there that are blind and only can go by sound. And this is terrifying because, again, movement or them talking or bickering because they can't find their way out, or this one did that and this one did this, and such a, terrifying because you're in a cave way below the surface trying to find a way out as, you got lost. Kind of scary. So this movie was good. The second one was bad, just so you know. The Strangers, 2008. Being isolated in the woods, let's say Verbo or Airbnb getaway. You're there with your family, and some people in masks are outside your windows, terrorizing you. I mean, that's pretty frightening. And then somehow they get in, and then they tie you up, and it's a very terrifying movie. It was good though. 2008. Then we had Hannibal that came out in 2001. This is very gruesome in the fact that this was the one where Hannibal Lecter had Ray Liotta's brain for dinner, or he was cutting it right in front of Clarice, who was then played by Julianne Moore, and that is an iconic scene from that movie. Also in 2000s was Red Dragon, which is a remake of a prequel to Silence of the Lambs. So the remake was of a movie called Manhunter. So it's basically the same film, but this time they added some things, and the acting and the production value was so much better. They had Edward Norton, obviously Anthony Hopkins. They had the late Philip Seymour Hoffman in this film, and Ralph Fiennes played the Red Dragon. So this movie was really, really good. That came out in 2003. Hannibal came out in 2001. So that finished the trilogy of Hannibal Lecter. And then subsequently they made 2 other Hannibal films, not as good, or really just leave those out of your Hannibal Lecter watching. You should go and probably see the Hannibal show, which was really good, and Lawrence Fishburne was in that series, and obviously Mads Madison, who I met at Boston Comic Con. And then there was another remake that actually was pretty good, Amityville Horror, in 2005. Ryan Reynolds. This was a different version of the legend of the Amityville Horror House. Basically, they were talking about it in the Puritan years down in the basement area, and that's where all the souls were kept. So I don't buy that part, but Ryan Reynolds and Melissa George, who played the Lutzes, was a really good acting job. So the movie itself was probably not based on another lore or whatever, but the original Amityville Horror is where it's at as far as the legend is concerned. So one other one was The Grudge, and this is a remake of obviously a Japanese film. Sarah Michelle Gellar played in this one too. It's one reason why I kind of enjoyed this film, because I actually enjoyed the Japanese version so much better. Then 2010, the decade, obviously you had It and It 2. Insidious started in 2010. It has 5 movies now. Sinister was really, really good, 2012, and spawned a sequel. Really, really good series. The Purge, the original Purge, 2013. Subsequently, it made a few more films. The Purge, Anarchy. Then there were 2 prequels before that. Or, no, there was one sorry, it's getting late. And another one, the Forever Purge. And so the Purge movie itself was terrifying. Again, a family stuck in their home behind their security walls. And the mayhem that was going on outside. So the country was, you had your 12 hours to pretty much purge, kill, loot, whatever you could do for one day a year. That was legal. Obviously, if you did it outside of that, it was not legal. But so this is a very interesting concept, and it's very horrifying. And to think, which side would you be on? Would you be a purger, or would you be somebody who would be locked in their home and defending your home at all costs? Do you have somebody that you would want to kill, or would you just go out and try to, steal from your neighbors or steal from department stores or whatever you could break into, but knowing the dangers of being killed? If you are out there, you're liable to get killed. Or, again, would you barricade yourself in and defend your family or defend your house at all costs? So it's an interesting dynamic. It's a, psychological, cat and mouse game. And finally, The Conjuring, which spawned a entire universe of, events around the Warrens. As somebody who is a part-time paranormal investigator, I enjoyed the original Conjuring, Conjuring 2, Conjuring 3. I was not a fan of Annabelle. Annabelle Creation wasn't too bad. Annabelle Comes Home was actually interesting, and I don't know the particulars as to what side this was told from, but if it was told from the daughter's side, I would question why the Warrens would have kept such a doll in the house, knowing full well that it was that haunted. although it's technically not in the house. The movies make it seem like their basement is where the museum was. It is not. In real life, there's their house, and then they have like a garage set up, and that is where all the things they've collected, all the haunted things that they have collected over the years. Obviously now, the Warrens are long since gone. The son-in-law has taken over that possessions, and he is thinking about making a bigger museum so that people could go and see it. Because right now, obviously situated in their yard, and they have a lot of no trespassing up there because there's a lot of people that are very curious about what is in that place now that it's been closed down. Obviously, beforehand the museum was open so you could go and see it, but now it's kind of closed now to the public until things probably can get easier. So that's it. I mean, right now we're early 2020s, so I don't really want to go through a lot of films there, but just going through, again, all these categories and all these films. I know there's a lot I've left off. I know people are going to be like, well, what about this movie? What about that movie? Well, again, these are just movies that I have enjoyed and I think is representative of the horror genre in general. And again, you can say that some of these movies weren't horror genre. Well, again, technically they are, because they have elements of horror in them. So whether you believe they are or not, I mean, that's up to you to decide. Like Silence of the Lambs, like Seven, even Jaws for that matter, even Predator for that matter, because like I said, for some reason, Predator is on that list. Is it horrifying? I don't know. I mean, it can be. I mean, you're in a forest and being hunted, so I guess that's technically that. And again, it's hard to determine when you get into horror parts to make it a horror film or make it onto a list of horror. But again, those are my recommendations. If you guys have any, please send them along. I would love to talk to you about them or talk about it on a future episode. Well, that being said, I know I said it was late, so I don't really have a lot of time to do these, so I'm trying to do these after work, late at night and whatever. So if sometimes they get a little discombobulated, I am apologizing for that. But I'm really thankful for all you guys for listening. And again, please interact with it. Hit like on YouTube, hit like or whatever it is that you do on Spotify and the audio websites. And I hope that you continue to listen, because I've got a lot of stuff. I will have some more spooky season stuff, and then again, I will have an episode about M. Night Shyamalan movies. I will have one about video games becoming movies, or games that were movies. And that one was going to take at least probably 2 parts, because there's so much content in there. So thank you guys for listening, and I will see you guys at the movies.
See you next time. Bye.
Waiting for you. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Hasta la vista, baby.
That's all, folks.